Update to our top story since we've been on the air in the last 10 minutes. Senator Dick Durbin, who is the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, has called on Justice Clarence Thomas to recuse himself from the case we're talking about, the one having to do with that legal doctrine, Chevron. Quote, once again, Justice Thomas's gaggle of fawning billionaires expands and their influence on the court grows larger. The Koch brothers are the architects of one of the largest, most successful political operations in history, aimed at influencing all levels of government and the courts. Justice Thomas hid the extent of his involvement with the Koch political network and never reported gifts associated with these engagements. The Koch network has invested tremendous capital to overturn long-standing legal precedent known as Chevron deference, which would handcuff regulators and serve the interests of corporate fat cats. As more details are revealed of Justice Thomas's undisclosed involvement with the Koch political network, there are serious questions about his impartiality in cases squarely confronting the Chevron doctrine. For these reasons, I'm calling on Justice Thomas to recuse himself. Again, that was a statement issued in the last 10 minutes from U.S. Senate Majority Whip Dick Durbin, who is the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Gabe, we are happy to have that statement to add to our conversation. Do you think there's any chance that Justice Thomas heeds Durbin's advice?
I don't, but I do think it's important, the statement that Judiciary Committee Chairman Durbin made. We want stronger recusal rules and stronger rules governing the ethics and conduct of the Supreme Court. And Congress has every right to do that, just like they control their budget and how many seats they have and whether or not they have gift rules and disclosure rules. They should have, Congress can pass stronger recusal rules. And there's a bill right now that the Judiciary Committee passed that would allow parties in cases to say, OK, Justice Thomas, it's not just you deciding if Justice Thomas participates in a case. That decision would be kicked to the rest of the justices, the 8 other justices, who could then decide if a justice was partial. And whether or not you like that solution, the larger point is that you can't have an individual who has a clear conflict in the case being the only person deciding whether or not they have a conflict in a case. So I think it's great that Chairman Durbin is getting more active and vociferous in his efforts to rein in the excesses of the Supreme Court. I'm looking forward to hopefully some more hearings in the coming weeks. But I think it's good when our political branches take a look at something. And I think also, just real quick, it's going to be very stark in the coming days when you have a bunch of Democrats lining up telling Senator Menendez to resign, who's talk about excesses, received hundreds of thousands of dollars in benefits, and no Republicans calling on Justice Thomas to resign, who's similarly received hundreds of thousands of dollars in improper benefits.
When I know that members of the Fourth Estate don't ever like to be part of the story, but this is the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee responding to your reporting. Do you have any thoughts or comments?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. What, doing this reporting has been an education in the rules or sort of lack of rules of the Supreme Court. And it turns out, like many of the other ethics rules that apply to lower court federal judges, the recusal decisions at the Supreme Court level are made entirely, as Gabe was saying, by the justice, him or herself. I think this is significant. I don't think I have seen this before in response to any of our previous reporting, but it's entirely up to Justice Thomas whether he'll recuse himself and also whether he'll explain his whatever decision he makes.
I just want to go back to this larger frame of the why. The why this matters. It is not good for the country to have 20% of the country think highly of the United States Supreme Court. We have no idea where we're heading in terms of our politics. We have no idea what will end up before the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court is 40 points less popular than it was the day it ruled on Bush v. Gore.
I mean, there's a couple of things. One is, Gabe mentioned there was a Judiciary Committee hearing where some of this was aired. And it was really interesting to see that the Republicans on the committee, their stance was, all you want to do is destabilize the court. All of the reporters who criticize the court simply want there to be no rule of law. You're burning it all down. And it's such a preposterous, first of all, it's shooting the messenger. Second of all, it's a way of claiming that we are monarchic and nobody gets to regulate us. And if you criticize us, you're destroying democracy. But the most important part of this, and I think you were sort of flicking at this, is it is entirely self-owned. This is the court stepping on a rake, this can be fixed. This isn't existential. Adopt an ethics rule, disclose your errors, promise that you won't do it anymore, and model good behavior. Abe Fortas was forced off the Supreme Court for behavior that is so trivial compared to every single one of the stories that we're hearing right now, because the court understood, liberals on the court understood of a liberal justice. This is destroying the reputation of the court. Here we are, 50 years later, and we're incapable, seemingly, of having the court own that they are the architects of their own misery right now, and instead they blame ProPublica.
Oh, I love that. Architects of their own misery. Gabe, they also don't equally share blame. Most of the disclosures are about undisclosed excesses enjoyed by Clarence Thomas and his pro-insurrection wife, Ginny Thomas. Most of the bad feelings people have about disclosure are related to revelations about one justice. How do the rest of them feel about that?
Not great. It's clear that there is some dissension in the ranks, that there are some justices who want to move forward a little more aggressively on reining in some of these excesses, whether it be with gift rules or travel rules, more disclosure rules, or a formal code of conduct. And there are some justices who are pushing back on that. And that's, I think, pretty much as I can disclose. But, the court wants to speak as a group of 9 when it changes internal policy. You saw that back in April, the letter that you highlighted to Chairman Durbin earlier in the show. And that was signed, that statement of ethics, principles, and practices. Though it didn't change any policy, it just restated things they'd already done. All 9 of them signed it. So I think that it's a real challenge, absent congressional action, which we know in the House and the Senate in different hands. Absent congressional action, it's going to be very difficult to get them to agree to something. And just one thing, I know Justice Kagan a few moments ago mentioned, we should probably adopt an ethics code, she said on stage at Notre Dame Law. I want to see what's in the ethics code first, if that's something that they actually go forward and do, because, and this has not been said by many people, not just me, but it'd almost be the worst if they just adopt, some random ethics code and say, oh, we're done. I think there are strong standards that they need to adopt that go just beyond sort of the vague generalities of the lower court's ethics code. So I think that's going to be something to watch as well.
So you've dangled something in front of me. I'm going to try to make one more run at you, Gabe. Safe to assume that Kagan, Sotomayor, and Jackson are for more ethics. Would you put Roberts and Kavanaugh in their block?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. Anybody else?
So I'm having some trouble on beyond the 5. I think there is some, it's interesting. The Wall Street Journal reported that in 2019, when this was first being most seriously talked about, and Ethan Torrey, who's the head of the Office of Legal Counsel at the Supreme Court, drafted an ethics code and circulated it to all the chambers. Justice Alito actually made edits to that very document. So, I think that while we all think, okay, Alito might be against something, at least he's been engaged on this. We haven't seen any engagement on Thomas in this area. And Gorsuch's last public event was closed press out in Colorado, and Barrett, just hasn't really mentioned this head on in her public appearances. So, I don't know if it's necessarily 7-2 or 6-3 or 8-1 right now, but historically, look, in recent history, the justices have all acted as a team of 9 when they've changed internal policy, though historically, justices, whether it be Chief Justice Warren Burger being the first to say, okay, hey guys, we're putting out our financial statements. Before even the financial disclosure was passed, pre-Watergate, he said, okay, we're putting out our financial statements. He said that unilaterally. I think that Chief Justices can act unilaterally. I would like to see Chief Justice Roberts act unilaterally in instituting some stronger policies. But I'm just concerned that he doesn't have the cojones to do it right now.